Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Let's talk inflation and let's talk bugs. There has been a major economy warping bug that's been found today, and it's something that's resulted in huge inflation across the 3.25 Trade League economy. This relates to the very specific choice of divination cards that were given to the Burial Chambers map. Not that you can actually use this in Burial Chambers itself, but that if you can get those divination cards to exist somewhere else, perhaps in a tier 1 map, and then you were to use them with a very carefully chosen scarab, you might be able to generate dozens and dozens of divine orbs every single map that you run. This is the story of how 3.25's economy started looking a lot like 3.24's. For those that don't recall, in patch 3.24, there were a number of mechanics added to the game that multiplied loot together in various convoluted ways. So there were scarabs, there were Allflame Embers, and there were Necropolis mods. There's a whole lot of different things going on. If you use these casually, none of them individually felt particularly impactful. If you knew how to min-max them, they were pretty strong. Grinding Games got a lot of negative feedback about this, and at some point during week 1 of 3.24, they released a patch that caused lots of problems. In fact, it broke the league. That patch massively buffed a lot of these loot multipliers. Now what this meant was that if you were a more casual player, you started seeing appreciably more loot in every map that you ran. Not massively more, but it was a little bit noticeable. On the flip side, if you were a min-maxer that knew every single trick in the book, and you knew exactly how to make everything stack that was able to stack, then you were able to go from getting 20 or 30 unique items every map, like you might have been getting before, to getting literally 100,000 a map. And once you start getting 100,000 of them a map, a couple of them are going to be Headhunters, a couple are going to be Mage Bloods, a couple are going to be Defiance of Destiny, a couple are going to be Squires, a couple are going to be Calandra's Touches. This was the reason that all of the tier 0 unique items cratered in price last league. It was because of the combination of Back to Basics, Allflame Embers, and a number of other mechanics that all stacked together and all multiplied with each other, so that players could get so much item rarity that every item that dropped was a unique, and ridiculous amounts of item quantity. Grinding Games completely reworked all of the drop mechanics in 3.25 in order to try to prevent this happening again. As part of this, they took one of the lesser offenders, which was the divination card scarabs, and they made them weaker. But it was the way they made them weaker that caused all the problems. Let's have a look at the Burial Chambers again. Brother's Gift is the only divination card that could drop if Burial Chambers was tier 1. And in 3.25, they added the Nameless Seer, who allows you to scry a map. What scrying a map does is it lets you swap its divination cards with another tile set. So you take the divination cards that are native to Burial Chambers, which is this set of 4, and you swap them with the divination cards that are present in Siege. Now, every time that you run a Burial Chambers map, you could get Home, Side Quest, The Trial, and you can't get Broken Promises because Broken Promises is tier 13+, and Burial Chambers by default is tier 10. But you're not concerned about that. What you're concerned about is what happens when you run tier 1 Siege maps, because the Thaumaturgis is banned, it's tier 2+. The other two divination cards are banned, they're higher tier again. But Brother's Gift is not banned. So, you're playing normally, you're using these two things together, what happens? Well, you pretty much get no divination cards. You're running around your Siege maps, looking for that elusive Brother's Gift, but Brother's Gift is a rare card, you don't see it very often. Where things really break is if you find a way to force divination cards to drop. Isn't it convenient that Grinding Games just reworked all of the divination scarabs, and one of them has a text up to 3 packs of magic monsters in area drop additional divination cards. This is divination cards from the area, although that's not made clear, and those divination cards, they're just drops. So let's imagine that you're running a map where the only 2 legal divination cards are the Fortunate and Reign of Chaos. In this scenario, you kill one of these magic monsters and it drops the Fortunate or it drops Reign of Chaos. But it's not a 50-50 split. It respects the relative rarity of those 2 cards. Reign of Chaos about 100 times as common as the Fortunate, and so about 99 times of 100, you'll see a copy of Reign of Chaos. The other 1 time in 100, you'll see a copy of the Fortunate. That, however, goes out the window when there is no other card that's legal. Very similar to the old Kirak mission tricks that existed with Lava Chamber, but this is much more significant than that. This Divination Scarab of Plenty trick was causing you to get literally dozens of Divine Orbs every map that you ran, and you weren't really capped in the number of them that you could run. What's been the consequence of this? Well, the players who are printing Divine Orbs using this were able to buy most of the Mirrors of Calandra that they could find on the server, most of the tier 0 uniques they could find on the server, and push the price for these chase items right up into the stratosphere. At some point, Granny Gear Games realized what was happening and they stopped this interaction, so now no one else can do it. But that also means that that lead that was established is now locked in. There is now no way for anyone else to replicate that economic advantage with the exact same method. You'd need to find something else, and that's not going to be easily done. That's the facts of the matter. That's what's happened. Let's talk about possible resolutions from this. I think a number of people's first reaction is to think, oh gee, this looks like cheating, this looks like item duplication. The problem is, if it was that, it'd be easy to solve it. You permanently ban the people who are involved in it, and you do a write-up tomorrow saying, yep, this is what was happened, this is the amount of items that were duplicated, the people who did that, they're permanently banned from the game, and when we did that, we were able to delete X number of the items that were duplicated. And that would solve the problem. But the problem is that that relies upon some sort of guilt on the behalf of the people doing it. The reason we've gotten into this mess is that before the patch went live, Granny Gear Games didn't talk about what divination cards were going to be in what map. If they had, this interaction would have been found. I would have found this if they'd given out this list of divination cards earlier, and I would have gone public about it. And I certainly wouldn't have been the only person to do so, and then Granny Gear Games would have been able to emergency patch it before this current mess. But there's been no exploiting, there's been no cheating involved in this. The way I suggest they resolve this is to start out with an emergency temporary ban on trading. This would be something that would be unfortunate, it'd be really awkward, but it's kind of necessary to stop things getting any worse until tomorrow when New Zealand comes online and they can come up with a more permanent solution. The more permanent solution is to have a look at the amount of raw divines that were actually created this way. If it was of the order 5,000, that's just going to be a blip on the radar. That's the sort of thing you say, oops, we stuffed up, but it's not going to be a long-term problem. It's not going to cause long-term ripple effects throughout the economy, and we're just going to leave it stand. But if it's more like 50,000 or 250,000 divine orbs that were printed this way, then in that case, they need to do something more drastic, and I suggest they move the stashes of the people who did most of this into standard, and by way of compensation, they give the people who are involved in figuring this out one of the Godslayer MTXs, which are awards Granny Gear Games give out to people who do extraordinarily well in certain limited events, or one of the demigods items. This is a way of saying, congratulations, you won this event, but we're not going to let it be a boot stomping down on the whole Trade League economy for everyone else. Ultimately, I think that's the least bad solution they've got. Something that can then save 3.25 from being a repeat of some of the debacles of 3.24, where there are a number of things people could do on days 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of the league to generate an enormous economic advantage that then everyone else that didn't participate in these was hopelessly behind and really struggled to ever catch up to. That's a bad situation. That's not something that I think they should repeat. And the best way to fix that, I believe, is to yeet that entire stash into standard. And then because it's not a flagrant exploit, make the apology in the form of giving some sort of unique MTX. Something that allows the people who are involved in this to show off their mastery of the game, that let them come up with such a tricky interaction. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. May Volorbs have interesting results, and don't use one on the entire league economy.